A couple of days ago, I heard something about the fable of Israel crossing the Red Sea. Not enough Israelites, like the Bible declares, and certainly no evidence. Well, let's take a look at the evidence. Red Sea begins with R. Scroll on down. Moses and Israel crossed the Red Sea at the Gulf of Aqaba. Skeptics insist too many to cross the Red Sea. Objectors insist that a large group of people could not have successfully crossed the Red Sea, especially with the Egyptians in pursuit. The answer: Israelites crossed over the Red Sea at the Gulf of Aqaba. Let's see how that works out. The proper name, translated Red Sea in Exodus, in most Bible translations and versions, is transliterated Yam Sup in the Hebrew Bible. Yam means sea, and Sup is a noun, which is a general term for marine plants. It can designate freshwater bulrushes, seaweed, marsh reeds, saltwater ocean plants, etc. So the proper name Yam Sup can refer to a sea which washes up or has on its shores a great abundance of marsh plants or rushes or seaweed or reeds, etc., depending upon the context. In the context of the exodus of the children of Israel from Egypt, and in these passages, Exodus 10:19 and so on, the Hebrew name Yam Sup is always translated Red Sea, which was the name given to it by the Greeks in the Septuagint. The origin of this name, Red Sea, is uncertain. It may be derived from the red color of the mountains on the western shore, others from the red coral found in the sea, or the red appearance sometimes given to the water by certain zoophytes floating in it. This sea was also called by the Hebrews Yam Mitzrayim, the Egyptian sea, and simply Ha-Yam, the sea. The events following Moses' flight from Egypt into Midian, a land east of the Gulf of Aqaba, provide a clue as to the location of Mount Sinai, to where the children of Israel traveled after leaving Egypt. So we're going to check this out to see if it's plausible. During the 40 years Moses was in Midian, he tended the sheep of his father-in-law Jethro. While Moses was tending Jethro's sheep, he had the experience with the bush that would not burn out. When Moses turned aside for a closer look at this strange event, God spoke to him out of the bush and made him a promise. And God said in Exodus 3:12, "So he said, I will certainly be with you, and this shall be a sign to you that I have sent you when you have brought the people out of Egypt. You shall serve God on this mountain." So evidently he was still there in Arabia. The mountain where Moses saw the burning bush presumably was in the region where Jethro lived, since Moses was pasturing Jethro's flocks there. The traditional Mount Sinai is over 300 miles by land from Jethro's home in a region where there is very little water or pasture. Also, to make an Arabic location of Sinai more certain, the Bible specifically says that Horeb, Mount Sinai, in Deuteronomy 4:10, where Moses had the experience of the burning bush, is in Midian. Of course, if Sinai is in Arabia, that location offers many more choices for crossing the Red Sea than a location for Mount Sinai at St. Catherine's. For the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aqaba is the border between Egypt and Arabia for hundreds of miles. Besides specifying that Sinai is in Midian, which is in what was Arabia during the time of Paul, Galatians 4:25, the Bible gives many indications that Israel crossed the Red Sea at the Gulf of Aqaba, not Lake Serbonus or Bitter Lakes or North Suez, as some contend. These latter sites are far too north, and do not provide any reason why Israel should have been trapped there, and do not take into account the elapsed time of about 25 days from leaving Egypt to the Red Sea crossing Pi Ha-Hiroth. We're presuming these things are true for the sake of argument, and then looking at the facts to see if it's plausible. So, the children of Israel left Egypt on the 15th of the month at Abib, Nisan, which has 30 days. Look at Numbers 33:3, Exodus 12:1, beginning to end. And when they crossed the sea, they went 3 days into the wilderness of Shur Etham, Exodus 15:22, Numbers 33:8. Then to Marah for about a day, then to Elam for about a day, and then they came to the wilderness of Sin on the 15th of the second month, after their departure from the land of Egypt. The accounting of the days is as follows. 15 days time elapsed in the month of Nisan, plus 15 days time elapsed in the second month, less 3 days time in the wilderness of Shur, and less 1 day each in Marah and Elim, a net total of 25 days, from the time the children of Israel left Egypt to the time they camped before the Red Sea, before crossing the Red Sea at Pi-hahiroth. And we'll look at that as we go through. Also, the New Testament makes explicit what the Old Testament implies. Paul says that Mount Sinai is in Arabia, Galatians 4:25. And Israel had to cross the Red Sea somewhere at the Gulf of Aqaba in order to stay out of the Promised Land and to get to Arabia. One feasible location for the 2 million plus Israelites' successful crossing of the Red Sea is along the western shore of the Gulf of Aqaba, the Nuweiba Peninsula in Egypt. It is a sandy beach in Egypt, 4.25 miles long by 2 miles wide, which could accommodate several million people and their flocks and herds. It can be located on a map by starting at the northernmost tip of the Gulf of Aqaba on the Egyptian side and then going 50 miles south. It is the site that best matches the biblical account. Note that the Gulf of Aqaba was called the Red Sea in ancient times. I don't know if there's a video still available here. It was then. Here we go. You go to this site. I don't know if you have it still. Those are. Oh, here it's Red Sea Crossing. Click on that, and you can go to the Red Sea Crossing. It's still available. Lots of great information. Let's go back to our study. Here's a little map I was able to copy and enhance a little bit. So here's the line of the crossing. Kind of went south here. And there's Nuweiba Beach. And there's the crossing where chariot wheels and bones were discovered. There's Pi-hahiroth and the Elohim, and there's Midian. It's all Arabia, and there's Mount Sinai. So it's a good map to look at, and there's some pictures of Rephidim and Mount Sinai. So we'll explain that in a second. Having departed Ramses, the children of Israel arrived at their first encampment at Sukkoth, at the northern end of what is today called the Gulf of Suez, whereupon they traveled through the wilderness to the Great Sea, through what is today called the Sinai Peninsula. The final part of the journey was evidently through a mountainous region along the Wadi Watir Canyon Trail, where it terminated at the Gulf of Aqaba and Nuweiba Beach. Go up a little bit here. The mountainous terrain, the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea. We have a little canyon here, and it blocked them from going back because the Egyptian chariot army was pursuing, and they had to go forward because they couldn't go on either side of this great canyon. So they were stuck here in this big Nuweiba Beach, 4 and some odd miles wide along, big enough for their encampment for several million people. Well, whereupon they traveled through the wilderness to the Red Sea through what is today called the Sinai Peninsula. The final part of the journey was evidently through a mountainous region called the Wadi Watir Canyon Trail, where it terminated at the Gulf of Aqaba at Nuweiba Beach. The Israelites would have been traveling from Sukkoth to Pi-hahiroth at the Red Sea along the natural road, a portion of which was frequently used as a trade route before the caravans turned northward toward Canaan, whereupon the Israelites went southward through the wide mountainous gorge to the sea. Take a look at that. You see, they went south this way. They could have gone north to Canaan, but they went to cross southward. Once on this last leg of their sojourn to the Red Sea, retreat was impossible, so they had to press on while there were great numbers of people flocks and herds right to the edge of the sea. The Israelites' journey through the mountainous terrain as described in Scripture does not coincide with what some contend was a journey down the eastern shore of the western branch of the Red Sea to the Straits of Tiran, today called the Gulf of Suez, across a continuous coastal plain 200 to 500 feet above sea level with sandy beaches. But the location on the opposite side of the Red Sea to which the children of Israel crossed, it was branched to the right and to the left, Israel crossed it stipulated in Scripture as Baal-Zephon, which is the name of the supreme god of the Canaanites, a location likely to be closer to the land of Canaan than so far south near the headwaters of the Gulf of Suez at the Straits of the Tiran. Canaan is located far to the northeast in the Promised Land, Israel's final destination. Josephus wrote in Antiquities of the Jews, confirming that the route was mountainous, not sandy beaches. Now when the Egyptians had overtaken the Hebrews, they prepared to fight them, and by their multitude they drove them into a narrow place. And that's the canyon. For the number that pursued after them was 600 chariots with 50,000 horsemen and 200,000 footmen, all armed. They all seized on the passage by which they imagined the Hebrews might fly, shutting them up between inaccessible precipices and the sea. There was on each side mountains that terminated at the sea, which were impassable by reason of their roughness and obstructed their flights. Wherefore they pressed upon the Hebrews with their army, where the ridges of the mountains were closed with the sea, which army they placed at the gaps of the mountains, so that they might deprive them of any passage into the plain. So there we go. We're looking at a pull-away picture here. And there's the Sinai Peninsula. There's the sea. The Red Sea had a branch going this way, and also a branch going on this side. So the wilderness is here. We have the Red Sea still going up on the Arabian, Midian side. There's Arabia. Instead of the other side, Gulf of Suez. So the map above indicates that Midian and Mount Sinai are in Arabia, in Saudi Arabia, Galatians 4:25, not the Sinai Peninsula. Ancient Egypt proper is shown in dark green. Light green areas were subject to Egyptian rule, so you would call the light green still part of Egypt because they had a big influence there. Here's the view of the Wadi Watir Canyon Trail, wound around near some mountainous regions. And here, look at the mountains here at the seaside at Nuweiba. This is all Nuweiba Beach. This is a view of the Nuweiba Beach at the end of the Wadi Watir Trail at the Gulf of Aqaba. Note the buildings on the right here, right side of the beach, thought to be Migdol, an ancient Egyptian fortress which blocked the northern escape route along the beach. It is today being restored and a coat of stucco added. There's Nuweiba Beach. So there's a Nuweiba Beach area. There's Migdol. Maybe I should blow this up a little bit more. Pile down. Oh, much easier. You can see there's the fortress. And then come down to this. There's Migdol. Profile view. Pi Hahiroth, Nuweiba Beach. Look how large it is. But I lost it again. All right. Made it so big I lost it. See if we can find it again. There we go. Go back and come back. Okay, there you go. Nuweiba. This computer's so sensitive. I should be so sensitive.